Prime Minister Mark Carney has appointed Montreal MP Marc Miller as the new Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, filling the gap left after Steven Guilbeault's sudden resignation from cabinet last week. Guilbeault stepped down after the federal government struck a deal with Alberta that advances a new pipeline to the BC coast. Miller, a Trudeau-era minister who initially did not have a role in Carney's government, also takes on the official languages file as he steps into a position facing pressure at home and from the U.S. Tessa Bennett joins us live in studio with the latest. Tessa?
Nisa, Miller is taking on this role, which is a reimagining of former PM Trudeau's Heritage Ministry, while the U.S. tries to dismantle the Online Streaming Act and the Online News Act, two cornerstones of Canada's effort to make tech giants support Canadian content and journalism.
I, Mark Miller, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me.
Prime Minister Mark Carney shuffled his cabinet on Monday after the sudden resignation of Steven Guilbeault last week, and he's bringing back a familiar face from the Trudeau-era Liberal government. Marc Miller, formerly the Minister of Immigration under Justin Trudeau, was appointed as Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and will be taking on the languages portfolio as well.
Marc Miller is a very seasoned cabinet minister. He has some great skills in that regard. He's a very good communicator. He has held multiple portfolios in the past.
When Carney announced his first ever cabinet earlier this year, Miller notably did not have a role.
And while he was a close confidant of Trudeau, and it's to be expected in some ways that he was not part of Carney's cabinet initially, I think that Carney might be turning to him now in part because he wants to shore up the kind of voices around the table, the cabinet table, that are from Quebec.
Guilbeault resigned late last week, just hours after the federal government announced a new energy deal with the province of Alberta. In his resignation letter, Guilbeault expressed his opposition to the pipeline plan and said he couldn't stick around to see his climate action plan dismantled.
He was certainly known as a vocal proponent for strong environmental policies. Mr. Carney had in mind that it was important to pursue some of these larger natural resource development projects, which can potentially compromise some of the environmental initiatives that Mr. Guilbeault had worked hard to put in place under the Trudeau government.
Guilbeault left several gaps in Carney's cabinet. Miller is taking on the brunt of that responsibility, overseeing the Canadian Identity and Culture and Languages portfolios, at a time when the U.S. is actively trying to undo much of the work the previous government did to protect Canadian content. Under the Trudeau government, what was formerly the Heritage Ministry and is now Miller's position was focused in large part on taking on U.S. tech giants with legislation that compelled them to make financial contributions to Canadian content and journalism. Guilbeault introduced the Online Streaming Act, which later became law, along with the Online News Act.
The most noticeable outcomes have been large dollar figures. So the CRTC has already obligated the Hollywood streamers and big tech to pony up $200 million a year in terms of contributions to Canadian media funds. The Online News Act has been implemented, and that's resulted in Google contributing $100 million a year in licensing payments to Canadian news organizations.
Cultural and broadcast industry groups are now calling on the government to protect that legislation as trade talks with the Trump administration continue.
Well, nobody wants a $300 million hole in cultural spending, so they could be quite substantial. And the American streamers and big tech absolutely hate these two pieces of legislation. And they'll be going very hard at the trade table after these two things. They've already said so.
Elsewhere, Government Transformation Minister Joel Lightbound will replace Guilbeault as Carney's Quebec lieutenant, while Environment and Climate Change Minister Julie Dabroussin will take over the nature portfolio portion of his job. On his way into a cabinet meeting this morning, Miller addressed reporters not about Canada's content laws, but about the pipeline project jump-started last week. He said the government needs to sit down and start working now on consultation with Indigenous communities and stakeholders.